The galaxy hummed with activity as Earth's voice grew louder. Spaceports, once quiet and overlooked, now buzzed with representatives from across the stars. Diplomatic talks were held not in shadowed corners, but in the halls of great intergalactic councils, where Earth's influence was now a cornerstone of negotiations. Once disconnected, the galaxy now pulsed with the energy of unity, a unity in which humanity played a central role. And yet, as the crew of the Horizon reflected on their accomplishments, there was a quiet understanding that this was just the beginning. The road ahead was uncertain, but filled with potential. The ancient power they had uncovered still whispered, its full scope not entirely understood. Was humanity ready for the trials yet to come? The legacy of the past was undeniable, but it was the future that beckoned. As Earth stood at the precipice of this new era, Captain Stone couldn't help but feel the weight of the choices yet to come. Their rise had been swift, but with this new power came a responsibility so immense that even the stars themselves seemed to shudder in its presence. The network they had awakened had the potential to reshape the very fabric of the galaxy, but it could also be the catalyst for its destruction. The weight of this truth lay heavily on Stone's shoulders as she watched her crew, each person grappling with the moral complexities that their newfound power brought. They had been explorers, survivors, but now they were leaders, with the fate of countless civilizations hanging in the balance. The decision-making, once a shared duty, now weighed heavily on the captain. She understood that every action, every alliance, every decision would have repercussions not just for Earth, but for the entire galaxy. The future wasn't a certainty. It was a path, one that was still being written. And yet, the crew of the Horizon had a chance, a rare chance, to not only survive in this galaxy, but to guide it towards something greater than anyone had dared imagine. But there would be no easy choices ahead. Every step forward would be a test of humanity's resolve, its character, and its ability to wield the power they had unlocked with wisdom and restraint. As Captain Stone walked through the command deck, the hum of the ship's systems echoed in the silence. The Horizon had become something more than just a ship. It was humanity's beacon in the galaxy, carrying with it the weight of a responsibility that stretched far beyond their own world. The challenges ahead would be vast, but the crew was no longer the frightened explorers they had once been. They had become something else, something the galaxy had never seen before. The stewards of the future. The galaxy was vast, its stars gleaming like tiny points of light, each holding secrets and mysteries yet to be uncovered. But Earth was no longer a forgotten world, lost in the shadows of the stars. It stood at the heart of the galaxy, a force of nature, its place earned not by war, but by wisdom, compassion, and resilience. The power of the ancient network was now in their hands, and humanity would prove that they were worthy stewards of the galaxy, not through domination, but through unity and understanding. As the Horizon made its way to the heart of the galaxy, the stars ahead seemed to whisper. The legacy of the past was now a guiding light, but it was the unknown future that beckoned with open arms. Humanity had arrived not as conquerors, but as leaders, and their journey, humanity's true journey, was only just beginning. The plan was simple: strike during one of humanity's covert operations on a distant, uncharted world. The planet was seemingly uninhabited, its rocky terrain offering the perfect cover for an ambush. The Threxians, known for their precision and ruthless tactics, had deployed stealth ships and energy-based traps, ensuring that any human presence would be swiftly neutralized. Carter's team, usually the masters of stealth and strategy, was caught off guard by the sheer scale of the Threxian assault. The ambush was executed with surgical precision. Energy barriers sprang up, sealing the team's escape routes, and the ground shook as Threxian reinforcements descended. Carter's team was outnumbered and outgunned, their advanced tech no match for the superior firepower and strategic brilliance of the Threxian forces. Sergeant Alex Carter, however, wasn't like the others. Trained for situations just like this, he stayed calm under fire, his mind sharp even as his body was pushed to its limits. The Threxians may have had superior technology, but Carter had something they couldn't predict: sheer human willpower. As the Threxians encircled him, ready to take him prisoner, Carter's defiance remained unshaken. He refused to submit to their control, standing tall even as they moved in to capture him. He knew that the stakes were much higher than just his life. Humanity's survival in the galaxy was at risk, and he couldn't allow them to see humanity as weak. With every fiber of his being, he resisted, determined to show the Threxians that no matter how advanced they were, they couldn't break the human spirit. The Threxians, with all their technological might, had underestimated humanity. They expected fear, panic, and surrender from Carter. Instead, they found themselves facing a soldier who refused to yield, no matter the cost. Carter's mind raced as the Threxians attempted to break him with their advanced interrogation techniques. They used mind-reading devices that probed his thoughts, trying to find his weaknesses, but Carter's mind remained locked tight, his resolve stronger than any technology they had. The Threxians applied pressure, using energy-based interrogation, methods designed to make even the strongest minds bend. But Carter resisted, drawing strength from the very core of his humanity. In the face of the Threxians' power, Carter stood as a testament to the human spirit, indomitable, unyielding, and full of hope for the future. As Carter sat alone in his cell, bound by chains that could withstand the strongest forces in the galaxy, his thoughts drifted to humanity's journey. He remembered the early days of space exploration, the fragile first steps humanity had taken into the stars, and the countless battles they had fought just to survive. Humanity had always been the underdog, fighting against forces far beyond their understanding. But time and time again, they had prevailed. This strength, this unwavering belief in their potential, was what set them apart. The Threxians had underestimated that belief, thinking it was something to be crushed under their boot, but Carter knew better. As he sat there, facing the impossible, he felt the weight of humanity's struggle and its future pressing against him. He had seen humanity survive the darkest of times, and he knew that no matter how hopeless things seemed, they would always fight to rise again. The Threxians were just one more obstacle to overcome, and Carter would be the one to show them that humanity was not just surviving, it was thriving, and its place in the galaxy was just beginning. The Threxians had long been the galaxy's undisputed rulers, their power unchallenged, and their technologies a mystery to those who encountered them. But when humanity began its meteoric rise across the stars, the Threxians were forced to recognize the potential threat that lay in the heart of Earth's people. They had never seen a species like this, one that could endure, adapt, and rise against odds that would break most. So when they captured Sergeant Alex Carter, one of Earth's elite soldiers, they thought it would be the perfect opportunity to break humanity's spirit. They would use Carter as a political pawn, a tool to show humanity its place in the grand order of the galaxy. They didn't expect the fight they were about to face. Carter was captured on a covert mission on a distant world, a planet that seemed uninhabited but was secretly a Threxian stronghold. The Threxians had laid their trap with precision. Using stealth ships, they had positioned energy-based traps around the planet's perimeter, making escape impossible. Carter's team was ambushed before they even had a chance to react. Their advanced human technology, built for stealth and defense, was ineffective against the overwhelming force the Threxians unleashed. Carter was dragged from the wreckage, his team overpowered and scattered, His captors wasted no time. This would be a lesson for humanity. The interrogation room was cold, sterile, and harsh. The walls pulsed with a low hum as the Threxians activated their advanced technologies. Carter's body was bound, restrained by energy cuffs that could hold a fully grown Threxian in place. But it wasn't the physical pain that would break him. The Threxians believed their technology would chip away at his mind, using mind probes and neural manipulations to make him see the futility of resistance. They were wrong. Through the pain, Carter's resolve never wavered. His mind, trained for combat and mental endurance, held strong against their probing. Every attempt to break him, every energy pulse designed to shatter his will, was met with silence. Carter's eyes never left his captors, and despite the thrumming agony, he remained defiant. He thought of his comrades, his family, and the human race, fighting for survival. They had always been the underdogs, and that had never stopped them before. His refusal to submit was more than defiance. It was a message. Humanity would not kneel. Carter's thoughts flickered to his past, the rigorous training, the countless missions where his life hung by a thread, the memories of his family, his mother's smile before the war, and the strength that had kept him going through the darkest hours. He remembered what it meant to be human, to fight, to endure, and to never give up, no matter how insurmountable the odds. The Threxians' devices, their mind-reading tools, their torture techniques, were nothing more than a passing storm compared to the fire of humanity's resilience. He clenched his fists. This wasn't just about him. It was about every human who had ever fought to survive against the impossible. The Threxians thought they could break him, but they had underestimated the human spirit. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology. It was their resolve to keep fighting, to stand tall when the rest of the universe bent under the weight of fear. As the Threxians ramped up their interrogation, Carter's mind sharpened. The neural devices they had installed were meant to invade his thoughts, to twist his perception, but instead they began to malfunction. The Threxians, watching with growing confusion, saw their systems flicker. The readings on their monitors became erratic. Carter's silent resistance, his refusal to crack, was beginning to have an effect. His mind, focused and steady, was interfering with their technology. The very tools they used to break him were being warped by his sheer will. Slowly they began to realize a human, a single human, was disrupting their most advanced systems. This wasn't the outcome they had anticipated. Fear began to creep into the edges of their minds, a slow realization that they were no longer in control. Carter's willpower, his resilience, was a force they couldn't comprehend, let alone control. Commander Zorath, the leader of the Threxian forces holding Carter, stood at the observation deck, his hands clenched into fists. He had watched countless species crumble under his interrogation methods, but Carter was different. This human, despite every effort to break him, was holding firm, and it was unnerving. Zorath's pride in his race and their invincibility had been his guiding principle for centuries, and now it was beginning to erode. His perfect plan, one designed to show humanity their place in the galaxy, was unraveling before his eyes. The human resistance, the way Carter's mind was adapting and fighting back, was becoming more than an inconvenience. It was a threat. Zorath's pulse quickened as he began to realize something that terrified him. Maybe humanity wasn't what they thought. Maybe humanity wasn't just a species to be controlled. It was one that could break free of their shackles. And if this, unhuman, was any indication, humanity's rise could very well topple their empire. The Threxians' technology, once seen as invincible, was now malfunctioning, and the Empire's pride, once unshakable, was beginning to crumble. Zorath's commands became more frantic, his frustration building as Carter's silent resistance continued to disrupt their operations. The commander, who had never questioned the superiority of his species, was now forced to confront a reality that shook him to his core. Humanity was stronger than they had imagined, and if Carter could do this, what could humanity as a whole accomplish? The thought was enough to send a ripple of dread through the entire Threxian command. The balance of power in the galaxy was shifting, and Zorath knew they might be powerless to stop it. In the heart of their empire, the Threxians felt the first real seeds of fear. They had never faced an enemy like this. As Zorath looked out over the facility, the once imposing and invincible force of his empire now seemed fragile, vulnerable to the very thing it had long sought to suppress, the unyielding spirit of humanity. The Empire's dominance was built on the assumption that no species could challenge them, that no species could endure the weight of their might. But Carter, against all odds, had shown them that this was no longer true. And for the first time, the Threxians questioned everything they had once believed. The galaxy was about to change, and they were now uncertain of what role they would play in that new order. The Threxian Empire had long stood as the uncontested power in the galaxy, its fleets unrivaled and its technology unmatched. But the moment they captured Sergeant Alex Carter, they were unknowingly sowing the seeds of their downfall. As Carter endured their interrogation, something unexpected happened. The high-tech prison that was supposed to break him, designed with precision and boasting the most advanced alien technology, began to malfunction. At first, it was subtle. The lights flickered, the security systems began to glitch, and their once impenetrable walls seemed to breathe with an eerie hum. Carter remained silent, his defiance like a needle slowly pricking the heart of the Threxian Empire's pride. Each moment, each second that passed without him breaking, made their perfect systems seem more fragile. The Threxians' most advanced tech, used to control, manipulate, and break prisoners, started showing signs of wear. Their neural probes, which were supposed to invade Carter's mind, began to misfire. The energy fields that surrounded him faltered, and the once steady hum of the facility's machines turned into a dissonant rattle. Carter, still bound and restrained, didn't flinch. Instead, with every passing moment, his resistance, his sheer, unyielding presence, was doing the impossible. The Threxians, who had never once questioned their technological superiority, were now forced to confront the unsettling possibility that this human, this single human, was something far more than they had bargained for. Carter's mind, sharp as ever, had begun to work against them. Every pulse of energy, every attempt to break his resolve, was being turned back on them. His thoughts, once filled with images of his lost family, began to shift into something colder, more calculating. He wasn't just enduring the pain anymore. He was observing, learning, and waiting. The Threxian technology meant to control was now being subtly manipulated by Carter's sharp intellect. He began to plant seeds of doubt in their systems. The neural interfaces meant to probe his thoughts began to send them false readings. The Threxians, instead of controlling his mind, were now beginning to lose control of their own. The once unshakable Threxian confidence began to crack. In the control room, Commander Zorath watched as his empire's finest technology began to fail. He had expected this human to be a simple specimen, to be broken by their methods like all the others. But Carter, this one human, was defying all logic. Zorath paced back and forth, frustration mounting as he saw the systems flicker, their readouts increasingly chaotic. The Threxian Empire had been built on superiority, on technological dominance, and now a single human was making them question everything they had ever believed. "Why isn't he breaking?" Zorath muttered, glaring at the screen that showed Carter's unwavering face. His soldiers, once so confident, were beginning to whisper among themselves. The fear had begun to take root. Carter, meanwhile, remained calm. His thoughts were steady, his resolve as strong as steel. He had been trained for moments like this, when everything seemed lost, when the enemy was at its strongest. The Threxians thought they had the upper hand, but they hadn't considered the human spirit, the ability to adapt and survive, even in the most dire circumstances. With every pulse of pain, Carter's will only grew stronger. As the Threxians struggled to understand how he was doing it, Carter smiled inwardly. They underestimated humanity. He wasn't just resisting, he was turning the tables. As the Threxians' confidence cracked, Carter's mind worked faster, his thoughts becoming a razor-sharp weapon. He had been trained for psychological warfare, for scenarios where brute force alone couldn't win the day. The Threxians, with all their technology, had never considered that their greatest vulnerability wasn't in their machines, but in their own arrogance. With each interaction, Carter planted doubts in their minds, exploiting their perception of invincibility. He played their pride against them. The more their systems malfunctioned, the more Zorath's frustration grew. The once pristine, sterile environment of the Threxian prison began to feel claustrophobic, a symbol of their failing empire. The cold metal walls seemed to close in on them, and Carter, silent and calculating, slowly regained the power he had lost when they first captured him. Fear spread like wildfire through the Threxian ranks. What had started as a simple capture, a way to demonstrate humanity's inferiority, was now spiraling out of control. Zorath's confidence, once unshakable, was crumbling, and with it, the confidence of his subordinates. As Carter subtly manipulated their technology, his defiance became a symbol of something much larger. He wasn't just a soldier now. He was a representative of humanity's resilience, the very spirit that had allowed their species to rise from the ashes of countless wars and challenges. The Threxians, once so sure of their dominance, now found themselves confronted with something they couldn't understand: the human will to survive, to endure, to rise. It wasn't just Carter they were facing, it was all of humanity, encapsulated in this one man's unyielding spirit. Carter knew the time had come to make his move. He had manipulated the Threxians' confidence, slowly eroding their sense of control. Now he needed to strike. In the darkness of his cell, he waited, biding his time. With a steady hand, he triggered a sequence of events that would shift the balance. The facility's power began to flicker, then went out completely. The lights in the prison flickered before plunging everything into darkness. The once impenetrable security systems fell silent. For a moment, everything was still. The Threxians, caught off guard by the sudden loss of control, scrambled to react, but it was too late. Carter moved swiftly, using the malfunctioning systems to his advantage. The very prison that had been designed to break him now became his battleground. He didn't need brute strength to escape. He needed strategy. He needed their confusion, their fear. As he navigated the dark corridors, his every movement calculated, Carter knew that the Threxians were no longer in control. The very systems they had built to suppress him were now the tools of his liberation. And with each step he took, the balance of power shifted more and more in his favor. The Threxians, once so confident in their ability to dominate, were now scrambling to regain what they had lost. The tide had turned. Carter's fingers trembled as he approached the ancient relic hidden deep within the heart of the Threxian facility. The once impenetrable silence of the room now hummed with a subtle electric charge. The walls themselves seemed to pulse as if alive, resonating with a power long dormant. His breath caught in his throat. He wasn't just activating a weapon. He was igniting something far greater. Humanity's potential, buried beneath centuries of oppression, was about to emerge. The Threxian weapon system that lay before him flickered to life, its ancient technology responding to his presence. Its dormant circuits, once cold and lifeless, began to glow with a deep, resonant energy, sparking through the facility like a chain reaction. Carter's hand shook, but steadied as the realization hit him. This was no mere weapon. It was a galactic network, a force older than any of them, now awakening at his touch. The walls shuddered. Alien technology, which had always been beyond human comprehension, was now at his fingertips. The facility's sterile, high-tech corridors, once the symbol of Threxian dominance, were alive with the energy of the network. The once silent facility buzzed with activity, its power systems whirring back to life, cascading through the walls and lighting up the darkness. The ancient network spread out like a web, connecting distant stars, worlds, and civilizations. And all of it, Carter now realized, was tied to humanity. The key to this power had been within them all along, lying dormant until this moment. Humanity's true potential had just been unlocked, and the galaxy would never be the same. The sudden surge of energy was more than just a technological marvel. It was a warning. As the network activated, the Threxians, who had prided themselves on their invincibility, were thrust into a new reality. They had underestimated humanity, believing them to be a species of mere survivors. Now, as the relic's power coursed through the facility, the Threxians were faced with the horrifying truth. Humanity was not just another species to be conquered. They were the key to a new era. The realization hit the Threxians with a sharp, visceral dread. What they had once seen as primitive, fragile beings now held the fate of the galaxy in their hands. They had awoken something ancient and powerful, and the fear that gripped their hearts was palpable. The full scale of humanity's newfound power was terrifying. The Galactic Network, once a dormant relic of a forgotten age, had now become an active conduit for incredible technologies and knowledge. Through it, humanity now had access to systems that stretched across the galaxy. Entire civilizations, long isolated from one another, were now interconnected, bound together by the network that Carter had unlocked. As he stood in the control room, watching the network unfold before him, Carter could feel the weight of the moment. He wasn't just fighting for his survival anymore. He was fighting for humanity's place in the universe. And humanity, despite all its struggles, despite all the pain and loss, had earned its place at the table. The Threxians, once confident in their superiority, now stood on the precipice of their own downfall, as Carter's defiance and humanity's untapped potential collided in a monumental shift of power. But even as Carter realized the full scope of what he had unleashed, he was thrust back into the brutal reality of his mission. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the corridors, and Commander Zorath, leader of the Threxian forces, stormed into the room, eyes blazing with fury. His empire, once untouchable, was now crumbling in the wake of humanity's defiance. Zorath's pride had been shattered, and with it the unshakable confidence that had been the foundation of his reign. "You think you've won?" Zorath hissed, stepping forward with a snarl, his alien eyes narrowing in disdain. "You're nothing but a temporary annoyance. Your species is weak, and this is where your progress ends." Carter stood firm, his gaze never wavering. His body may have been battered, but his resolve was unbroken. This was his moment. This was humanity's moment. The ground trembled beneath them as the facility's power surged again. The Threxian weapon systems hummed to life, and Zorath raised his hand, signaling his forces to attack. But as the battle began, something unexpected happened. One of Carter's own crew members, someone he had trusted, turned against him, a traitor in their midst. The betrayal hit like a knife to the heart. Carter's own team was now divided, and the emotional toll of it weighed heavily on him. His faith in humanity's unity and their strength was shaken, but even in the face of this betrayal, Carter remained resolute. His mission was bigger than any one person's actions, bigger than any treachery. Humanity's strength lay not in its individual parts, but in its collective will to survive, to push forward no matter the cost. The Threxians had unleashed their most advanced weapons, and Carter's crew was surrounded. But even as the battle raged, Carter knew that the key to victory lay in their unity. Despite the betrayal, despite the odds, they would fight on. The energy surging from the galactic network altered the environment around them, causing the ground to shift, the walls to crack, and the very air to thrum with power. As Carter faced off against Zorath in a brutal showdown, every inch of ground fought for, every movement calculated, Carter's mind was clear. Humanity's future was at stake, and nothing, no betrayal, no weapon, no army, would stop him. The final battle was at hand, and Carter's unyielding belief in humanity's ability to adapt, to survive, to rise, was their only hope. The fight for survival reached its apex as Carter, his mind sharp and his spirit unbroken, struck decisively. With a burst of speed, he disarmed Zorath, sending the Threxian commander crashing to the ground. The once unstoppable force of the Threxian Empire had been brought to its knees, not by strength alone, but by the indomitable will of one human soldier. Zorath's defeat marked not only the end of this battle, but the beginning of a new era. Humanity had proven itself not just as survivors, but as the force capable of reshaping the galaxy. The fight for survival had turned into a fight for the future, and humanity had emerged victorious. The battle for survival had ended, but the true cost of victory had only just begun. As the final Threxian forces crumbled, the air itself seemed to vibrate with the power that humanity had just unlocked. Sergeant Alex Carter stood at the heart of it all, his breath heavy, his body battered, but his spirit unbroken. The ancient relic that had once been the source of Threxian dominance now hummed with a new energy. The Threxians had underestimated humanity, assuming they were nothing more than a fleeting species of survivors. Now the relic responded to Carter's touch, releasing a flood of knowledge and technology that had long been hidden from the galaxy. What had once been a weapon of unimaginable power was now humanity's tool for progress. The galaxy, reeling from centuries of war and distrust, was on the verge of a new era, a new age led by humanity. As the energy from the relic spread, it coursed through the galaxy like a river of light. The once feared Threxian Empire, built on a foundation of arrogance and technological supremacy, had crumbled beneath the weight of humanity's adaptability. The technologies they had hoarded for centuries were now within humanity's grasp, and the universe was beginning to understand what it meant to be on the receiving end of human ingenuity. The Threxians' greatest mistake had been to underestimate the one thing that no empire could predict: the human spirit. Carter's defiance had been the spark that ignited this revolution, and now, with the power of the Galactic Network, humanity would shape the future. It was no longer about survival, it was about ascension. Humanity was poised to take its place as the architects of the galaxy's new order. Earth's place in the galaxy had changed forever. No longer relegated to the status of a fledgling species struggling to survive, humanity now sat at the galactic table, taking its rightful seat among the great powers. The once divided factions of the galaxy, now realizing the extent of humanity's strength, began to extend olive branches, seeking alliances, trade routes, and shared technologies. Where there had been only conflict, there was now a chance for unity. Carter, standing in the command center, felt the weight of the responsibility that came with this new position. Earth's rise to power was not only about military might, but about leadership, about uniting civilizations, about navigating the complexities of interstellar diplomacy, and about ensuring that the galaxy would not repeat the mistakes of the past. Humanity, once thought weak, now held the keys to a future built on cooperation, trust, and innovation. The very foundations of galactic politics were beginning to shift, and Earth was at the center of it all. As Carter and his crew stood together in the heart of humanity's newfound empire, they reflected on what they had accomplished and what they had yet to do. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges they could not yet comprehend. But there was a quiet satisfaction in knowing that they were no longer just survivors. They were the architects of the future. The sacrifices they had made, the bonds they had formed, and the battles they had fought had brought them to this moment. The galaxy was vast, and there would always be new dangers, new mysteries, and new frontiers to explore. But they had proven something fundamental, that humanity's resilience was not just about surviving, it was about thriving. As they gazed out into the stars, Carter and his crew knew that their legacy would be one of hope, strength, and the unyielding drive to push beyond the limits of what was thought possible. The future had been forged, and humanity was now at the helm, ready to lead the galaxy into a new age. Humanity stood at the precipice of a new era, its future brimming with untapped potential. The crew, battered but triumphant, stared out into the vast expanse of space, reflecting on how far they had come. Once an underdog species, struggling to survive in the shadow of more advanced civilizations, humanity had not only survived, they had thrived. The ancient relic, once thought to be a weapon of destruction, had transformed their society and the very fabric of the galaxy itself. Carter, once a soldier bound by duty and loss, now stood as a symbol of human resilience, the catalyst that unlocked the power that had long been dormant within their species. Earth was no longer just a world on the edge of the galaxy, but now a central force, pulling civilizations from the brink of destruction into a new age of cooperation. But even as they stood in this moment of triumph, the future was uncertain. The crew understood the weight of their new role, the responsibilities that came with the power they had unlocked. There would be challenges ahead, new adversaries to face, and secrets within the relic that had yet to be unearthed. The journey of humanity had only just begun, and the road ahead would demand more from them than ever before. The galaxy had been reshaped, but many questions lingered, unanswered. The relic, now an integral part of humanity's destiny, held secrets far beyond their current understanding. Humanity's newfound role was still being defined, but the power they wielded was not without its costs. They had forged alliances, built new technologies, and united fractured civilizations. But the galaxy was vast, and within its depths there were still threats and challenges that no one had anticipated. Carter, looking out at the stars, knew that they had only scratched the surface of what was to come. The politics of the galaxy were shifting, and new players were emerging, some with motives that were still unclear. The relic had only begun to reveal its potential, and with it the keys to further mysteries, perhaps even darker than what humanity had already encountered. Their path forward was uncertain, and humanity's greatest test might not be behind them but ahead. The burden of this newfound power was heavy, but they would carry it, for the galaxy's fate now rested on their shoulders. The Thraxians were no longer the greatest threat. Humanity had grown into a force that would shape the future, for better or worse. As the crew stood united in the heart of Earth's new government, they saw the first glimmer of a bright, uncharted future. The war was over, the galaxy had been set on a course for peace, and humanity was now the guiding force, its influence spreading across systems. Their journey, born out of struggle and hardship, had transformed them from mere survivors to the architects of a new world order. There was excitement in the air, the palpable buzz of anticipation as humanity looked beyond its home planet and toward the stars. The alliances they had forged would be the foundation for future expansion, And as they prepared to send emissaries across the galaxy, they felt the weight of their role. It was a role that carried immense responsibility, but also infinite possibilities. The universe was vast, and it beckoned with the promise of discovery, of new worlds to explore, of new species to learn from, and even more unknowns to face. Earth had become a beacon of hope among the stars. Their potential, once constrained by the limits of their homeworld, now stretched beyond the horizon. Humanity was united, stronger than ever, ready to carve out its place in a galaxy that no longer saw them as mere survivors, but as a force for change, innovation, and unity. The future was bright, and for the first time in history, humanity was not looking over its shoulder, but looking forward into the vast unknown. With every step they took, they would leave a mark on the galaxy, and the galaxy would never be the same again.